It was been an interesting week, though. I definitely say that. I know over the weekend, Derek Brunson and Darren Till actually ended up fighting. I didn't get a chance to catch it. Did either one of you guys catch it?
So I watched it last night, and I thought it was a pretty interesting fight. The fight was finished in the third round by Derek Brunson, who's actually been on a little bit of a run in his last few fights. Pretty much the fight went like the first round. It was a little back and forth, but then Derek Brunson got the takedown, dominated, almost finished the fight. The first round, pretty much Derek Brunson went in there, and there's a little bit of back and forward between Darren Till again, but then he got him down to the ground and just kind of worked him until the round was over. Third round was more of the same, except for Derek Brunson took him down and finished him that time with a rear naked choke. To me personally, I think the fight was good. I think Derek Brunson has shown that he's improved, but I also think Darren Till has shown that I think at this point in time in his career, he should be more of a mid card fighter, trying to see as to where he actually fits in the UFC. But I don't think he's the contender that the UFC wants him to be or has tried to build him to be. I think Darren Till, I don't think he's like a trash fighter by any means, but I think he needs to win at least a few times.
I think Darren Till just needs to switch camps because it's probably one of those situations where like he might be the best fighter at his camp, and there's not a lot of evolving and room for growth, especially to work on his grappling. Because every time you see like training videos of him and all that, and I understand training videos isn't the main source you should use when it comes to how a guy trains, but just looking at his surface level, it looks like that the dude, he's only working on his stand up, and of course he's going to work on show his takedown defense. But as you've seen in the fight with Derek Brunson, it didn't really help him that much. In the second round, he was able to stuff a few takedowns and all that, but at the end of the day, it just wasn't enough. And he needs to go somewhere where they're going to help him with his defensive wrestling, his defensive grappling. Because if you look at it in the UFC, a lot of people in the upper echelon of each division has grappling skill to them and is high level. So I feel like that for him to get over that hump and actually win big fights, because the only quote unquote big fight he's ever won was against Kelvin Gastelum. I don't count Donald Cerrone because Donald Cerrone was kind of over the hill. You know what I mean? And he's also a guy that he's not really a welterweight fighter. He's a lightweight fighter. Yeah, he dabbled in welterweight and he beat some welterweight guys, but the welterweight guys he beat weren't like, they weren't top of the heap guys. So when Darren Till beat Donald Cerrone, I wasn't really impressed because I was like, he just beat a smaller guy fighting in a weight class he shouldn't have fought in. And Darren Till shouldn't have been fighting at welterweight to begin with. He was way too big and cutting way too much weight. So him at middleweight, I feel like that's a good weight class for him. But he needs to go to a camp where it's going to help evolve his game. Or every time he starts fighting upper echelon guys in middleweight, he's going to get beat and washed. And the blueprint is out there to beat him, really. Hey man, we just have to, press him against the cage and go for takedowns, because we know that he's going to be timid on the feet because he's worried about getting taken down. All hope is not lost with Darren Till, but if he doesn't change something soon, we could be seeing him fight for another organization.
Yeah, I mean that's very possible. Definitely, if this like if something like this continues. Like I said, I didn't get a chance to catch the fight, so like but I understand that at the same time, like a loss is a loss, and it never helps. Definitely when you're trying to make yourself, if you're still trying to be in the run to hopefully get a title shot one day. So it's something that, like we always say any other time, like, and like both of you guys have said, like you need to go back to the drawing board and figure out what's the best game plan. If you're the biggest fish in the pond, it's probably best to go to the ocean at this point. Like we all see it at any given time with many athletes where they go to this one point of their career where it's like, in order to get over this hump to that next great stride, you have to maybe switch the people in your camp, or you have to go and maybe take it to a different level in terms of training. So it's something that he has to really figure out and think on. But at the end of the day, at the end of the day, he'll learn from it. Hopefully, if not, like you said, we'll be seeing him with another promotion sometime soon, more than likely.
I also wanted to give mention to Khalil Roundtree, who had a finish last night, and he kicked his opponent in the side of his leg, and they said he blew out his MCL, ACL. Like, yeah, it was kind of
Word.
crazy. Yeah, like the finish was good, and I think for Khalil Roundtree, who's shown to be like a skilled striker, he took him out, and I think the win was important for him because he was on a 2-fight losing streak. But the finish was just crazy. Like DC was like, I don't want to look at the TV because like he fell, he kicked him in his leg, his knee buckled, and the fight was immediately over.
Oh
Like,
wow.
yeah, like, and they said that hey, his leg is done. They had him in a cast, like he could not walk. Everything, like it was like a finish in like emphatic fashion.
I I seen it. Actually, listeners, if you want to see it, it's all over Twitter. And I'm pretty sure you can YouTube it now because there's people posting clips. But I just think that it was a win that Khalil Roundtree did need, like Nacho say. But this win is actually sparking up some controversy, and it's a little polarizing because you have people coming out, even certain MMA fighters coming out saying, "Hey, that move should be illegally banned." Then you have the other side illegally banned. That sounds kind of like crazy, but the
Just say it
move
should
should
be banned.
it should be banned. But there, and then you have other people saying like, well, if you start to ban that, you might as well ban head kicks and certain submission holds and other stuff. And when you start doing that, you start to soften up the sport. And then at that point, it might turn into kickboxing. So it's an interesting take on this debate with the oblique kick on the front or the front leg kicks. It's I'm not a fighter, so I definitely can't say, hey, why this should be removed. But what I will say is if you do start to take away stuff, it does kind of take away from mixed martial arts. Because I feel like that the whole reason why mixed martial arts is big as it is today, and it's more liked and respected than boxing today, is because the fact is like, hey, this is the closest thing you could emulate to a real fight. If you're in a fight for your life or you're fighting somebody random on the street, this is it. You're not thinking about footwork and if you could do cross check hooks and etc. You're not thinking about that. You might have somebody who's nice boxing versus somebody who's nice grappling, or somebody who's a wild cannon, like, hey, I'm going to go for a spear and then try and pick him up and do an F5. And you know what I mean? So
what happened to Goldberg, man?
Yeah, exactly. So when you start taking away shit, hey, you can't do elbows, you can't do head kicks, you can't do oblique kicks, you can't do submission holds like a leg lock. It starts to soften the sport out where it's like, hey, you might as well watch kickboxing or something like that. And I feel like people won't like that. And so it's interesting moving forward how things are going to go. They already banned like soccer kicks and shit from the United States. In Japan, you can still kick somebody in the head if they're down, but in the United States, they ban soccer kicks. So it's kind of like, if you keep banning more things, will that hurt the sport of MMA? You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, I think I look at it both ways. So one way I do see, I understand it because I agree from a fan's perspective of like, hey, this can it softens the sport by meaning like the interest that I always had for it isn't there as much because what I used to see is not allowed now, right? I totally understand. I totally understand that. I totally understand that, right? But I also look at it from the standpoint of like, from the perspective of if that's what the fighters are asking for, I understand. I understand where it's like, hey, something like that, because I just looked at the kick, right? It's a nasty kick that it more than likely, if you get kicked with it, if it's done properly, that's probably going to be the end result, like what happened to his opponent. So I understand from that perspective of, hey, if that move is made and is done correctly, what's going to happen is I'm gonna end up tearing my ACL or MCL, and now I'm out for maybe an extra year on my career. So I also get it from that standpoint, but it's a tricky situation because, like you said, I care about the fighters and the protection. If the fighters feel as though it's dangerous to them, I totally get it. But at the same time, from a fan's perspective, like you said, it can also it may end up moving me closer to a different promotion just because of that. So it's a tricky situation. But personally, by preference, like you said, I would prefer that it would just stay. They don't change too many rules because, like you said, eventually it just snowballs itself. So
Yeah, and one last thing before I Nigel, because I know you want to say something. One thing is just one of the things I seen online was like, oh, because fighters don't prepare for that and they don't defend for that, and I think that's wrong because there's, you know, Robert Whitaker, he tried to do with Israel Adesanya and he defended really well. There's other kickboxers or strikers in MMA that know how to defend against it. And just because you don't know how to defend against it doesn't mean that now it should completely be banned amongst the sport. And just because you get kicked there doesn't mean your ACL is going to be blown out right away. Like, to my recollection, and I'm pretty sure a MMA fan in the comments or listener, they might be able to pick it out. But to me, I can't remember outside of the Khalil Roundtree fight where somebody got kicked with the oblique kick once and it blew out the ACL, MCL right away. I'm not saying that it's not possible. Obviously it's possible. You could head kick somebody and give them a concussion for a few months. But what I'm saying is, I don't think that injury like that is happening as much as the naysayers are saying. Now, if you want to say it's a dirty move and all that, and if you're a fighter saying that, all due respect to you, you would know a lot more than we would. You know what I'm saying? Because we're not training in the sport of mixed martial arts. We're just fans and analysts of it. But from outside looking in, I was like, well, it doesn't look like a lot of people are getting their ACL blown out in fights with this stuff.
Well, I mean, the way I look at it is like kind of like you said, Lyle, like the frequency of what's happening and how badly it's affecting people. Like, if this was something that was happening all the time and it's like, hey, like 90% of the time this move is landed, somebody's getting their ACL and MCL blown out and they can't compete for the next year. And it's just that bad of a move, then yeah, it would have to be removed or dealt with in some type of way. But like in this case, this is the first time I've seen it happen like this. And yeah, it's unfortunate that it happened that way, but it's a move to use and he used it properly. And that's what was supposed to happen. Now, I would hope that if this were to happen more frequently and it affected more fights, it's similar to eye pokes, right? We see people get poked in the eye, the fights are over, or they end in some weird shape or form. That's something that should be dealt with because it's like, hey, this is like affecting careers and the way the trajectory of these fighters' careers are actually playing out. But this isn't like that. This is like the first time this happened, and yeah, it might be a dangerous move, but not to the point where it's affecting like 90% of mixed martial artists.
yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
oh, I was gonna say no. There's a lot of truth in that, and there's actually something that Lau said that made me think about this also, where when you said like, hey, some fighters don't know how to defend against it, right?
Yeah.
And it actually made me think, okay, from that standpoint, there's a good point here where, okay, if you don't know how to defend against it, that just means you have to add it to your arsenal. And by taking it away, it can also, it may actually hinder the sport in terms of allowing it to evolve because hell, like we even see with John Jones, right, throughout his career where he would end up trying different moves that his opponents had never seen before. And it was like, okay, whether he's doing certain kicks to the shins or whatever, and oh, nah, this should be illegal. Should it be illegal or is the fact you just don't know how to defend it? So like there's a really good point there where banning something like this, if it's not like an eye poke like Nigel said, like if it's something that is not automatically going to end the fight, leave it in and you have to learn how to defend it because it allows the sport to even grow and evolve because there would be new moves that'll be out here one day that may even surpass that one at some point in time. So
yeah, it's not dirty. Like, hey, I'm going to kick somebody blatantly in the nuts. Like, yeah, that's illegal. That's